Charles Moscowitz here. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Kent Hovind is my guest of this segment. He is the official Dr. Dino from the Dr. Dino website. They have a ministry and a dinosaur park down in Alabama. Thanks for joining me, Kent.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
All right. So your thesis is one that is criticized by much of the establishment, but yet it is an article of faith for Christians and for Jews, and that is the biblical understanding of the creation of the universe and of the creation of man. And I would suggest that the other side, the side that believes that man just somehow emerged from what Darwin called the warm small pond, and it just sort of happened somehow, that their theory of evolution is, it's no more science than anything else. It's, we can debate the scientific merit, but the fact is that nobody has absolute hard proof about the creation of the universe. So we accept it on faith. What say you, Kent?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious there had to be a creator. I mean, things are so complicated. If I told you this plastic lid to a milk bottle happened by chance, you'd say, come on, that's crazy. Somebody designed it to fit on a particular milk bottle. Okay, I agree. Anybody with one eye and half a brain would know this has a designer and is designed for a purpose. Now, to compare this to the human body is silly, because one cell in your body is more complicated than the space shuttle. And you have 100 trillion cells in your body that are constantly being replaced. You have a factory making millions of these cells every minute. What would a factory look like that produced 1 million space shuttles a minute?
What you're saying, from a scientific standpoint, makes sense. And it even was something that, frankly, was understood by Darwin himself, who in his diary talked about seeing the single feather of a peacock and feeling sick as a result. And it implies that he realized that even this one particular item, the feather of a peacock, had millions of perfectly aligned facets and colors, perfectly arranged, and that this couldn't possibly have just simply happened as a result of some random smashing together of inanimate objects to create life, which is the essential aspect of the theory of evolution, that somehow life came out of non-life, which of course scientifically is very unsound, because science claims that you cannot get something out of nothing. So either you have life or you don't. And the theory of creation as presented by the Bible actually says that life was created by God, by a divine force, by a spiritual force. And was done so in the image of God when it comes to man. So I think that scientifically speaking, if you take a look at the incredible complexity of man, or even the incredible complexity of a single eye of a bee, you have to conclude that this could not have been simply, as Darwin said, something emerging out of nothing, out of crashing together of inanimate objects.
Well, I think there's only two choices. Somebody made the world, or the world made itself. That would include the whole universe. Nobody's thought of a third choice. Either somebody made it, or it made itself. Well, there are people who don't want to believe God made it. So out of nothing, the Big Bang was when a dot of nothing and created everything. That is so stupid. It's beyond comprehension how anybody with one eye and half a brain could believe such a dumb thing, but they do. So what do? Well, we believe that there had to be a God, somebody who's outside of time, space, matter, had to create time, space, and matter. We are the ones who are stuck in time, space, and matter. We cannot go back in time. Have you ever wished you could go back just 5 seconds to undo the dumb thing you just did? You ever been there before?
So, of course.
We can't. The atheists always say, well, if you go back in time, I say, stop. You can't go back in time. I did a debate yesterday, and this young man said, well, if you look at the fossil record, I said, excuse me, there is no fossil record. There's a bunch of fossils. but there's no record. They don't talk. They don't have dates on them. You're putting your interpretation on them to make them say what you want them to say. You squeeze the data hard enough, it'll confess to anything. And so the truth of the matter is, there is overwhelming evidence that the universe had to be created and that it cannot be billions of years old. It just can't be. Now, the Bible claims that God did it in 6 days. I cannot prove that, but I can tell you that's the only way it'll work. There's so many millions of symbiotic relationships where certain animals require certain plants or they can't live. Certain plants require certain animals or other plants and they can't live. Just look up symbiosis. There's millions of examples of it. Which came first, the flower or the honeybee to pollinate the flower?
And you make the point quite well, Kent. And I think that even Darwin himself, again, and I'm the author of a book on the topic called The Apostles of Evolution, which deals with the political fallout from the theory of evolution, which I argue goes right to why they push this theory. But Darwin himself, according to my research, acknowledged in his own lifetime that there was no fossil evidence of the theory of evolution, and that at some point there would have to be fossil evidence. Well, there isn't fossil evidence. And I've argued this issue with evolutionary thinkers, and they will yell and stammer and pound their fists, and sometimes they hang up on me, but they have to, at the end of the day, admit that there is not a shred of fossil evidence to suggest that one species evolves into a superior species. And that is the theory of evolution. And as far as the age of the earth, I don't think that it contradicts the Bible to say that the earth itself might be millions of years old. At least that's my understanding. But because the Bible in the book of Genesis says that, once the earth was created, it goes through a series of events that led to the creation of man. And even there is no fossil evidence that man is older than, I think, whatever the Torah says we are, which I think is 3,600 years old, because there's no way to carbon date anything earlier than that at this time.
Well, first place, no fossils would count at all. All you could prove if you find a fossil, any fossil, all you really could prove is it died. You could not prove it had any children. You certainly could not prove it had children that lived, nor could you prove it had children that lived that were different. No animal today ever produces any babies other than its same kind. Cows produce cows and dogs produce dogs, period, end of story. The Bible says they'll bring forth after their kind. I don't see any reason to doubt that. It says it 20 times in the first 7 chapters. So I think he wants us to get a message there. So I think it's obvious from observation, which is what science deals with, experimentation, observation, would say animals produce after their kind, period. Now, if you wish to believe, capital B, believe, like a religion, that dogs and bananas are related, well, you're welcome to believe anything you want. But don't call it science, and don't force everybody to teach that in the school system. That's not science, it's nonsense. It's a religious belief. It's a dumb religion, evolution is.
I agree, and it's a theory, and even they call it a theory. It's not fact, it's not scientific, and it's amoral. It removes the possibility of an understanding of a divine element in life, which also is obvious and self-evident. I mean, do you think it's just somehow miraculously happens that you wake up in the morning and open your eyes to the world and all the things you see and experience, that this just somehow happens on its own? There's obviously a spiritual component to life. There's a value to every being on this planet, and there's a special value to the human being because we are created in the image of God. That is a system that was set forth by God. And the whole evolutionary idea is an attempt to overthrow God, and that's why it's so popular with the radical, internationalist left. I mean, it goes back to, the fight between man and God, as Whittaker Chambers said in his book Witness. He said that human race is involved with the struggle between God and man, and with man representing, in his case, communism. And that, if you either you believe that we're created by God, or you believe that man is supreme in the world and that man can mold and shape human life because you have it with a clique of superior enlightened people. And that's the struggle that we've had in every generation since Adam and Eve, and that's the struggle we're having now.
Well, that's why I started this ministry, drdino.com, DRDINO, and it's called Creation Science Evangelism. We want to use the obvious scientific evidence for creation as a means of evangelism. We want to get everybody to get saved, give their heart to the Lord, and love, and not only to believe in that creator, but to know him personally. He's my dad. I know him. He's taken me to his house one day to live forever in heaven. Meanwhile, he's got me down here trying to reach a few more people and tell them to come live in his house. So it's really an amazing, simple ministry we have. We're in Lenox, Alabama, a little bitty town of 35 people, straight north of Pensacola, 70 miles. And we have a Christian Science Center, a camp, a museum, all based on science and the Bible. And it is so fun. We give tours all the time. You need to come down here, Charles, and see what we're doing.
I'd like to check it out. Tell people how they can reach you, Kent, and get more information.
Well, they can call 855-BIG-DINO, like a big dinosaur, 855-BIG-DINO. I'm extension 3, but I give tours all day of the Dinosaur Adventureland, so I don't answer my phone. I got a family waiting on me now. Gonna have to go pretty soon here. But we've had 85 people baptized here in our lake. I'm a Baptist preacher. And after you give your heart to the Lord, you're supposed to get baptized as a public symbol. But we try to fulfill that command of the Lord. And we believe the Bible teaches that God made everything in 6 days. Well, that would mean dinosaurs had to live with man. If he made everything in 6 days, like, hello, duh. Mm-hmm. Dinosaurs have always lived with man. They just called them a different name, dragons or something like that. And there's a lot of legends of them living with man and people killing them, killing dragons. They're mentioned in the Bible. Job 40, Job 41.
Yeah, the Leviathan and the Behemoth. I mean, these are animals that are mentioned in the Bible. And, I'm about to get ready for the Shabbat as a traditional Jew. And my family will be observing the seventh day of creation, the day of rest.
Right.
So I'm with you in that regard, Kent. We're on the same page. And I certainly, wish you well. And the forces that we are arrayed against us are pretty much the same. They're the atheistic, materialistic world order forces that want to impose their rule on reality, let alone on human civilization. So, again, I know you're going to go as wise. So tell my listeners again where they can reach you.
Well, they can reach us. drdino.com is our website, or 855-BIG-DINO. They can call my YouTube channel, Kent Hovind Official. We have about 162,000 subscribers now. But see, the guys who started this country 130 years ago, they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They're endowed by their creator with certain rights. Well, that'd be 250 years ago now. So they believe that rights come from the creator. Well, you get a bunch of guys together who believe that, and they'll throw the tea in the harbor and start a big war. So I think we need one again.
That's why America is the ultimate manifestation of God's will. I mean, it's we believe that we're the first nation to really embrace the literal definition of the Torah, which is that man is created in the image of God and the rights come from God. So God is sovereign, man is a limited sovereignty, and that the government is there to protect sovereignty. It's not there to offer sovereignty. It's not there to, make law. It's there to interpret God's law. That's something that all of the founding fathers of this country understood. And, I think that, we need to bring that in and let people understand that, and especially in these stressful times.
Yep. Well, that's what we do in our ministry, Dr. Dino. They can call me 855-BIG-DINO. I have a seminar series that's 18 hours long, covering how to prove the earth is not old. What was the Garden of Eden like? Why did they live to be 900? Where did dinosaurs live? We have one whole 2-hour session just on lies in the textbooks that are used to teach kids evolution. The whole series is $50. Call 855-BIG-DINO. After they're done watching it, they can copy it, send it back, and get their money back. I know you're Jewish, Baptist. See, I used to loan my videos out. I learned right away that Baptists don't steal, but they do borrow and never return. So We sell it for $50. When you're done, send it back, get your $50 back. But call
And
855
also, and just to finish up here, the sentence you mentioned about all men are created equal, that is a biblical idea that comes from Genesis, that man and women are created in the image of God, and that the idea of evolution does not recognize that. It's the opposite. It believes that some people are superior to others biologically. That is what the theory is, that we're at various levels of evolving. That is the ultimate and eventual. They have to recognize that in order to accept the theory of evolution. And it is a racist theory, and it is an anti-human theory. Anyways, Kent, again, I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon. It's great talking to you. Let's stay in touch. And thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, brother. All right. Bye-bye.
All right, Ken. Take care.